This is Vijayanagar in 1512. We're the number 3 great power in the world, both adjusted for institutions and non-adjusted for institutions. We're already an empire. We're making 63 ducats a month with no loans, no inflation, and we have the only gold mine in India. We've already wrapped up quality and trade, which mesh super well with our own national ideas. We've completed most of the mission tree, giving us some amazing claims and modifiers. More than 100% religious unity. Absolutely insane combat ability modifiers, plus 30% for infantry, 42% for cavalry, and 10% for artillery, and our force limit is huge, and we're about to build that up. We have 6 subjects in India, we're ready to annex them, we're ready to get some more, and we're ready to reconquer cores. We have more than 40% crown land already, and our estates have very nice privileges. And we're ready to conquer the rest of India, ready to move on to Persia and to Southeast Asia, and go on to dominate the world. This is how you can do the same. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be doing a guide for Vijayanagar for EU4 1.36 King of Kings. So Vijayanagar is a nation that starts off in southern India, and at least on paper we are the most powerful nation in India. Of course there are a couple of other super powerful nations over here such as Bahmanis, Bengal, Jaunpur, Delhi/Sirhind depending on who wins, but Vijayanagar has a really good starting position because we basically have no threats from the south, and after we take care of all of these minor nations down here, we're free to simply push up and expand into the north without looking behind us and seeing if anyone wants to attack us from here. As Vijayanagar, we start off as Hindu, which is of course a really powerful religion. We got the deities right here that help us out quite a lot, and we also start off with the semi-unique Indian Nyankara system tier 1 government reform, which is really powerful, giving us plus 15% national manpower and plus 100% vassal force limit contribution. Vijayanagar ideas are also really strong for economic and military focused gameplay, starting off with plus 10% infantry combat ability and plus 1 possible advisors, and finishing off with plus 50% merc manpower. And in the meantime, we have plus 10% global trade power, even more combat ability with cavalry right here, minus 10% stab discount, plus 1 tolerance of heretics and heathens, plus 1 yearly prestige, plus 1 diplomat, and plus 5% discipline right here at the end. As Vijayanagar, you'll go on to dominate your southern neighbors and conquer all of them before pushing up into the north, crushing your main rival Bahmanis over here, and cleaning up any of these other minor nations before going on to dominate the entire subcontinent of India and further expanding over in Persia, Khorasan, Burma, Indochina, and so on. So sit back, relax, and learn what you need to do as Vijayanagar. Alright, here we are as Vijayanagar, and you will notice that we have a pretty nice and sizable mission tree right here, although these 3 missions right here can't be accomplished right away, so we're not really gonna focus on them too much. For this one right here, we need to receive war reps from 3 different countries, and we will get to that eventually when fighting some major nations. For this one right here, we need to promote cultures and have 8 churches, so we'll get to that eventually. And for this one right here, we pretty much need to chill until we conquer all of these Tamil cultured provinces and until they gain no unrest. And for this one, we need to fight Bahmanis. More on that later. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go into your states and summon the diet. You can choose whichever agenda is best for you. You will notice that we start off with less than 30% crown land and with 4 of the Indian estates right here, so the estate setup is going to be a little different to what you usually do, at least over in Europe. First, we're going to go ahead and give the Brahmins Brahmin governments right here, along with Brahmin leadership, religious diplomats, and Brahmins education. Then we're going to give the Marathas primacy of the Marathas, recruit Maratha drill masters, and increased levies. Then later, we're going to be giving the Jains giant political control, but not for now because we don't have enough crown land. But for now, we are going to give them indebted to the Jains. And then finally, we're going to give the Vaishyas a Vaishya advisory board and patronage of the arts. Now you can seize land, and now we're gonna give the Jains giant political control for the Diplo points. That's the estate setup done. Then we're gonna go ahead and choose our current deity. These are the deities we have, and for now, the best one at the start, I recommend Shiva for the minus 10% CCR and minus 5% AE impact. All of them are really good depending on what you're doing, of course. Now it's time to hire some advisors. We aren't making that much money right at the start, but we can afford to lose money a little bit. So we're just gonna go ahead and hire whichever level 1 admin advisor you want. I have this half cost stab discount guy, maybe you have him as well. So if you do have him, definitely go ahead and hire him. Then get a Diplo rep or improve relations level 1 dip advisor. I do have a Diplo rep guy, so I am gonna hire him. And then get a morale, discipline, manpower, or fort defense level 1 mill advisor. I don't have any of those guys as level 1 guys, so I'm just gonna get this land force limit guy. And now it's time to set some rivals as well. Go ahead and rival the nations that have rivaled you. In my case, it's Bahmanis, Gujarat, and Orissa. Now we need to start working on an alliance and spying on our neighbors that we want to fight immediately. So simply start spying on whichever 2 nations you want down here. It really doesn't matter which guy you spy on. I'm just gonna spy on Missouri right here, and let's see Madurai, for example. Really doesn't matter. And then with this third diplomat right here, you're gonna look to ally a Bahmani rival that could potentially help you out in your war versus them. In my game, that's me, Jaunpur, and Gujarat. I rivaled Gujarat, so let's see if we can link with Jaunpur. And yes, with a little bit of improving relations, we can. So I'm gonna work on allying Jaunpur. If you can't ally any Bahmani rival, just work on allying someone up here that you're not gonna fight too soon. Really doesn't matter who it is, as long as they're a medium to strong powered nation. And now we're waiting to get claims on whoever we're spying on down here. In the meantime, you can also rearrange your army a bit by sending both of these guys to Vijayanagar. Once they're there, I'll tell you what to do. And what I also recommend is taking these 5 light ships right here, telling them to protect trade in Coromandel and go home during war. Once your army is here in Vijayanagar, what I recommend doing is taking 2 cavalry regiments and deleting them. We don't need them for now, and they do cost quite a lot. Instead, we're gonna go ahead and hire the Free Company. For now, while you're spying on these guys, you can lower army maintenance and turn off your forts to save a little bit of money in the initial year or two. You can also start focusing on admin right away, since we are going to be doing quite a lot of conquering in the early portion of the game, and we don't want to fall behind in admin tech. If you get this event right here, obviously choose the general. And after a little bit of improving relations with Bengal, not Jaunpur, Jaunpur started disliking me, I can go ahead and ally them even though they're not a Bahmani rival. No big deal, whichever nation you can ally up here, do it. At this point, you may notice that we start off allied to Andhra. Break your alliance with them. After you've allied a nation up here, you should go into the Diplomacy tab in the Influence Actions and over here in the Offer Vassalization tab, and you will notice that there are quite a few nations right here north of Bahmanis that will accept Diplo Vassalization. So before you're getting ready to declare your first war right here, go ahead and start improving with some of them to Diplo Vassalize them. Sure, they are pretty weak and we are able to conquer them super easily if we get to border them, but by the time we get to them, they will already be annexed. So why not wrap up a few provinces here for free? The game does sorta want us to play with vassals as well, with all of those bonuses we get from them. Once you get a claim on some of these guys, raise army maintenance, activate your forts, and put that general, if you got him from the event, in charge of the army. If you didn't get that general, go ahead and recruit one. And there we go, after about 2 years have passed, I've gotten an ally, I've gotten a vassal, and I've built up a spy network on some of these guys down here. So, whichever guy you spied on, simply go ahead and start your war versus them and make sure it's someone over here, and if you can, co-belligerent some of their allies. I'm not gonna go that far, I'm just gonna do it with Missouri and Venad right here, which is this little nation down here. And there we go, that's your first war started. You're fighting at least 1, but maybe 2, 3, or even 4 guys down here at the same time. Go ahead and beat them up, these wars are easy. In the meantime, you can improve relations and stuff like that with some other nation up here that you want to diplo-vassalize. I'm gonna do it with these guys. And once this war is done, you can go ahead and full annex everyone that you were fighting. And there we go, that's your first war done. You've wiped out a couple of nations down here. Now, we're focusing on the rest that we haven't wiped out. So spy on them and work on vassalizing other nations up here. We'll declare as soon as we're done coring whatever we took in our first war. Once you acquire that second vassal, you can give the Marathas subject rights. And once you've cored up the provinces you took in your initial war, you're good to go ahead and declare your next war versus these guys down here. In the meantime, I've vassalized these 2 nations as well. You're good to roll around with 4 vassals at each point. But there's my next war declaration versus Cochin right here. I'm not gonna co-belligerent Calicut, because in that case, Orissa right here would come in. So there's my next war. Pretty simple. You're fighting whoever you want to down here. And there we go, my next war is done. I'm simply gonna full annex both of these nations down here. Now that that's done, I'm gonna declare on Madurai right here immediately because their ally Andhra won't join since Bahmanis have declared on them. This is something that could happen, Bahmanis declaring on Andhra or Orissa declaring on Andhra after you've broken your alliance with them, but before you've declared on them yourself. This is completely normal, no big deal. As soon as you get the Diplotech 4, you can start building up marketplaces immediately because we have so many provinces right here that are centers of trade and estuaries, and there's also so many all around India. So definitely start building them up immediately in every province that will give you more than 2 trade power. And there we go, that war is done. In the meantime, I had a little pretender revolt, no big deal, that is event related, and we're simply gonna full annex this nation down here. And there we go, in about 2 or 3 wars, you've taken care of everyone that's located over here. Obviously, we haven't fought Kote and Kandy just yet, because 99% of the time, they ally Bahmanis. And we're only gonna deal with them when we deal with Bahmanis. And that's exactly the nation that we wanna fight next, after we've taken care of these nations down here. So, after you're done with those guys, you can go ahead and start spying on Bahmanis. This is not to build the claims on them, this is just so we can get sieges done a little bit faster. We already have cores on them that will help us with our war declaration. So simply chill a bit and get ready to fight Bahmanis. In the meantime, you can work on improving your nation economically. And after a little bit of chilling, whenever you're ready, you should go ahead and declare on Bahmanis. Now, Bahmanis may be a little slightly powerful during this point in the game. Usually they've gotten into a war or two, so they shouldn't be really too high on manpower, and they almost never ally any other strong nation right here. The nation that they're 99% of the time going to be allied to is Kote down here with their subject Candy, of course. So you should be able to easily take on the Bahmanis 1v1, but if you can, definitely call in some of your allies. In my game right here, Bengal doesn't seem to want to join, mostly because of the fact that they're fighting in another war. So it's no big deal, I won't even call in Bengal. And there you go. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and declare on Bahmanis for the reconquest of one of your cores down here. This war will be a little bit annoying, but you can easily win it. And there we go, my war with Bahmanis is pretty much done. I pieced out Kote down there to make them break their alliance with Bahmanis, and I did get a little lucky because Orissa declared on Bahmanis as well. But once your war with them is done, here's what you need to do. I recommend taking back your 3 cores, obviously. Then I recommend taking this province and their capital, which is actually pretty important that we take down. And at this point, you'll be around 40-ish aggressive expansion. After that, I recommend taking just 1 or 2 more provinces until you get up to about 50 aggressive expansion. So maybe something like this, for example. And there we go. That's your first war versus Bahmanis done. Make sure to get war reps as well. No need to take any money. And there we go. That's that, and that war is done. At this point, you will be able to take the mission Battle for Raichur, where you gain 50 mill points and permaclaims on some other stuff that Bahmanis or other nations may own. Now it's time to chill a bit and get ready to fight some other nations that obviously aren't Bahmanis. For your tier 2 government reform, I feel like you have a couple of options. You can either go strengthen noble privileges, obviously for even more manpower. However, we already get plus 15% national manpower from here, and we gain quite a lot of manpower from increased levies as well, so maybe that's not really that needed, and the Marathas may be a bit too influential. So if you don't want to go with that, you can definitely go with compromise with the nobility, so increased levies no longer gives them influence and no longer decreases max absolutism. But we also have another semi-unique tier 2 government reform right here, empower the polygars, which gives us minus 5% dev cost and plus 10% infantry combat ability, which is going to mesh very well obviously with the starting 10% infantry combat ability, and with even more infantry combat ability we're going to be getting from idea groups later on. So if you definitely want to lean into the whole super strong and super high quality army, go with empower the polygars. If you're going to struggle with manpower, go with strength and noble privileges, and if you want a middle ground, compromise with the nobility. In my game right here, I do think it is the most fun way to play as Vijayanagar. I'm gonna go with empower the polygars. Once your war with Bahmanis is done, you've probably already gotten to Tech 4 in every category, and that means it is time to develop for the Renaissance. And Tanjore right here is a pretty good province to develop it in because it's already a level 2 center of trade, it's farmlands, and it's a cloth producing province, which makes it one of the cheapest provinces to develop in the game. So simply go ahead and activate the Encourage Development State Edict as well. That makes it even cheaper. Go ahead and dev it up to 15 and then expand infrastructure to make it cheaper once again. And now you can continue pushing for the Renaissance with whichever category you have the most points in. I have a ton of points in pretty much every single category right here, the most in mill, so I'm simply going to develop it equally in every category until we get the Renaissance. And there we go, I pushed it up to 36 dev and the Renaissance is present right there. Obviously you won't be able to embrace it right away since you will need to wait for it to spread a little bit and you'll need to gather up some cash. But there we go, the Renaissance has been developed and we've also ticked off the age objective for a large city. At this point, if 10 years have passed, I recommend giving the Marathas the integration policy as well. There we go, there's the Marathas integration policy, and I do recommend annexing whichever subject you border. Obviously, it's going to be your starting subject, Jaffna, right here, but if you do border another subject by this point, you can definitely go ahead and annex them as well if 10 years have passed. If not, you're simply going to annex whichever guy you vassalized up here when you start bordering them. Since you should have also made Kote break their alliance with Bahmanis or the other way around after your first war with Bahmanis, you can go ahead and start spying on Kote as well. There we go, Jaffna has been annexed. To save some money, you can definitely go ahead and delete some forts down here that aren't really necessary. Keep the ones in the north up until we conquer some more up north. Now that my truce with Kote is up, that's where I'm going to be continuing my next war. You could fight them after the war with Bakhmanis, you could fight the Maldives, or you could fight someone up here. In my game, Bakhmanis no longer exist pretty much since Gujarat and Orissa have expanded into them, and during this point I also acquired some other subjects, this nation up here, and this nation over here, which used to be Bakhmanis' vassal, but someone made them release them. So we can also reconquer their cores over here, so those are my new vassals. Keep an eye out on nations like this that you can diplo-vassalize for free, especially on nations that you have the ability to reconquer some of their cores, like Telangana right here for example. Right now, I'm up to 5 subjects. Either way, no big deal, there's my next declaration on Kote. Fight whoever is the easiest for you to fight. Like I said, maybe some of these small guys down here, or maybe some of the big guys up here. For your first stage ability, I recommend taking Justified Wars. And once your war with Kote or the Maldives is done, you can go ahead and full annex them. If you're fighting someone else up here, of course, I'm going to show you what to take from them once I fight them as well. But there we go. My war with Kote is done. There's a full annexation on them. Around the 1460s, make sure to lower autonomy everywhere that you can. Sure, you will fight some rebels due to this, but it will help your economy massively. Make sure to do this every 15 or 20 years. Now that I've spied on the Maldives, I'll do a little minor war versus them. You can wrap these guys up whenever you want to. They're really not a big deal. And of course, now that the war with the Maldives is done, I'm gonna be full annexing them. Now it's time for me to shift my attention towards some of the stronger nations up north. You may have noticed that I have a ton of points right here and that I'm not ticking up. I'll only do that after I embrace the Renaissance. Make sure you don't start fighting some of these guys up here while you're still Miltech 4 and they're 5. Right now I can notice that Bengal is in a war versus Orissa because they've declared on Arkan, and also Mewar, Orissa's ally, won't defend them, so that's a perfect opportunity for me to strike on them. By the way, I did get Miltech 5 for this. So, once you fight Bakhmanis and once you wrap up the rest of the nations down here, like Kote and the Maldives for example, or anyone else that you haven't fought here, maybe due to some alliances, you can continue your other wars up north, most likely versus Gujarat or Orissa, nations that you start off bordering as well, or that you get to border after you fight Bakhmanis. So there's my declaration on Orissa right here. I'm simply gonna declare a reconquest for one of my subject Telangana cores right here. Obviously, if you don't have a reconquest, just use a regular conquest, and you're aiming to take some coastline provinces over here when you fight Orissa, and it's the same deal versus Gujarat. You're mostly focusing on coastline provinces. So there we go. There's your next war after Bakhmanis and after you finish off the rest of the small guys down here. There's my reconquest. Now that I can finally embrace the Renaissance, I am gonna go ahead and get new giant loans. I actually took out one regular loan to pay off an old giant loan so I can take new giant loans. Remember, it's all about the interest. And there we go, there's the Renaissance embraced. Pretty late because we're such a big nation, but no big deal. Do it whenever you can. And once you get Admin Tech 5, obviously, you would be able to tech up twice at the same time, most likely. But once you do get Admin Tech 5, it will be time for your first idea group, and for your first idea group, I recommend Quality Ideas. This is a no-brainer because of all the combat modifiers. Look, we have this plus 10% infantry combat ability, and we already have plus 20% if we've also gotten Empower the Polygars, which means now we'll be at plus 30% infantry combat ability. The plus 10% CAV combat ability is also nice for the other 10% combat ability that we have from our national ideas, and we'll also get artillery combat ability and even more discipline that meshes very well with the discipline we're already gonna get. And since we're such a large nation and we have a large coastline, we're gonna be playing with boats as well, so all the boat modifiers are excellent as well. Quality Ideas, probably the best opener for a Vijayanagar playthrough. And now that I white pieced Arkan, my war with Orissa is done, and like I said, in your war with Orissa or with Gujarat, depending on who you're fighting, those will most likely be the nations that you'll be fighting up here after you're done with Bakhmanis and these guys down here, but even if you're not, you're still going to be taking the same thing. Focus on the coastline. Obviously, I'm going to give my subject back their 3 cores right here, and then I'm going to be taking these provinces over here, which are in the Coromandel trade node, and we're still good with aggressive expansion, so I'm going to continue to blob out over in this direction, still focusing on the coastline. And there we go, this is about as much as I'll take from Orissa, while also getting war reps. Remember, we still need to do that for a certain mission over there. And let's say I'm also going to take these 2 provinces over here as well. And there we go, that's my war with Orissa done. Now it's time to chill a little bit, and most likely get ready to fight Bakhmati Bahmanis again if they still exist, because your truce with them will most likely be up by this point. Now, you will want to be careful with gov cap until you hit admin tech 8, and it is really gonna be a struggle, to be honest, so simply give whichever one of your estates has the least influence the governing capacity privilege. Sure, this will knock down your crownland control, but it is necessary. Now that I've cored everything up that I took from Orissa, I'm gonna be declaring on Bahmanis to finally wrap them up because they've shrunk so much. If no one else fights them in your game, you will need a couple of wars to take them down, but in my case, I think I can go ahead and full annex them. I can also do a reconquest, for example, for one of my subjects' scores. I actually don't know whose score that is, and it seems to be, let's see, Telangana right here for this province right here. So let's just declare for that. And there we go. Now that my war with Bahmanis is done, it was pretty easy. I'm gonna be full annexing them. And there we go. Just like that, Bahmanis no longer exists in my game. Now I'm just gonna fight some small nations that popped out of Orissa. Once you hit admin tech 7, it will be time for your second idea group, and for your second idea group as Vijayanagar, I recommend trade ideas. Now, first off, the policy with quality is very nice for plus 15% trade efficiency, but as you can see right now we have 2 merchants, and we're at least gonna go ahead and control these 5 main trade nodes over in India: Gujarat, Doab, Bengal, Deccan, and Coromandel. But our expansion won't stop there, because in a normal-ish game as Vijayanagar, you sort of want to stretch all the way from Persia through all of these areas and regions right here all the way to Indochina, and that's a lot of trade nodes that we want to route trade through. So that's why I recommend trade ideas for your second idea group. The global trade power from here is going to help out with that as well, along with this plus 20% global trade power from here, the additional merchants, trade efficiency, trade range, caravan power, trade steering, and merchants, which I already mentioned actually, is going to be very, very nice. So buff up your army and buff up your economy. And there we go, my war with these 2 minor nations is done. I'm simply gonna full annex them. And right now, something else that I can notice is that Gujarat's ally Jaunpur won't help them out, which means this makes this war so much easier for me because Jaunpur is pretty powerful. By the way, Bengal recently did break their alliance with me since I started bordering them. So as you can see since the start, we fought some small nations, fought a big nation, fought some small nations, fought a big nation, now we're fighting some small nations again, and now it's time to fight a big nation again. So that's pretty much how your conquest in India is going. Fighting a bunch of small guys, maybe vassalizing someone, diplo-vassalizing them, then fight a big guy. Then repeat and do the same. And now that I've wrapped this up, I'm immediately going to declare on Gujarat right here to take advantage of this. Once again, just like with Orissa or whoever you're fighting that has a coastline, you're focusing primarily on the coastline. So that's why I'm going to declare for Thana. For your tier 3 government reform, since we're going to continue to play with subjects pretty heavily even after we conquer all of India and go this way and this way, that's why I recommend representatives of the crown. This makes our vassals or marches more powerful by giving them 25% more tax. It also gives us diplo relations even more vassal force limit contribution, which meshes very well with this right here, so that makes it a very nice tier 3 government reform. If you're not playing with subjects for some reason, then I recommend expanded royal court or centralized monarchical bureaucracy. But I'm gonna go with this. And now that my war with Gujarat is done, it did take quite a while if I'm being honest. I'm once again gonna focus on taking coastline provinces. But first, let's see if I can find a nation to release from them and reconquer their cores. So as we can see right here, Ahmednagar is a really nice nation to release and reconquer their cores because they have cores on about 7 provinces right here. So that would be really nice, a really nice nation to release and reconquer their cores. So that's why I am gonna take Thana right here, but only that in this region right here. I'm not gonna take any of these provinces right here that are Ahmednagar cores because we'll take care of them later. And after taking Thana, I'm also gonna take this since there's no one to release from here, and then I'm also gonna continue to focus on their coastline. This is about enough for now since that is quite a lot of aggressive expansion, and we're starting to fight the guys that are sort of Sunni or Hindu. Remember, Bahmanis were the only Indian nation that is Shia, so that's why I really don't care about the aggressive expansion with them. But this is about enough for now from Gujarat. Remember, this might look like a small number of provinces, but most of these are pretty highly developed, at least for this region and this point in the game. And of course, war reps and money. And that's my war with Gujarat done. At this point, I can finally take the mission Spoils of War, which gives us a dev discount. This next mission obviously wants us to develop our capital to 24. We will get there eventually, no need to strictly focus on that. At this point, I'm also able to take the mission Advance to this, whatever it says right there, because we've taken over some provinces here. And after we do that, this event happens, where you can pretty much move your capital to Bidar, which used to be Bahmanis' capital, and we gain about 6 development over there. Or we simply don't move our capital capital, and the 6th development goes to Vijayanagar. You can do whatever you want to, honestly. I'm just gonna go with this first option right here. And just like that, we got 24 dev right there, and there's that mission right there too. These are the areas that we got claims on. You may notice that I'm not annexing subjects over here even though I border them. That's because we're taking it easy with the governing capacity. Once we hit Admin Tech 8 and we start building up those courthouses and gain the additional gov cap from Admin Tech 8, then I'll start annexing the subjects that I border. And right now, let's take care of this other minor nation that has popped out over here. So it's the same deal like I said earlier. Fight small guys, fight a big guy. Fight small guys, fight a big guy. In the meantime, vassalize guys. Of course, after you build up all of the marketplaces, focus on building production buildings. That's what I've been doing so far. Every time I get 100 ducats, I'm building a workshop in the high-value trade good provinces. Sure, I'm gonna put one down in my capital too, but you already know the high-value trade good provinces where the trade good is worth more than 3 ducats. So that's what I'm doing. Of course, don't be afraid to keep taking out new giant loans all the time. If you don't take out these 1% loans, you're not going to be able to scale your economy that rapidly. And as you can see at this point in the game, the loans are pretty huge. So take out those loans, build the buildings, pay them off. Get bigger loans, build the buildings, pay them off. You get the point. And there we go. I'll continue with production buildings in all of the high-value trade good provinces. Just like that. Now we have some money left over. Let's do some churches in provinces that give us more than 0.1 ducat income. After that, of course, I do recommend focusing on barracks as well in the grain and livestock producing provinces. There we go, the war with this minor nation is done. Let's go ahead and full annex them. And of course, let's not forget to release Ahmednagar from the province we conquered from Gujarat. There we go. Look at all of these nice cores that we can reconquer later from Gujarat and gain less aggressive expansion. Keep in mind that during this point, we are converting provinces slowly. Now my truce with Orissa is up and I will be declaring on them even though they're guaranteed by Malwa. This is actually a good thing right here because Malwa is allied to Bengal. So I can fight Orissa, make Malwa end their alliance with Bengal, and later if someone else hasn't fought them, of course, we'll take care of Malwa as well. So we fought a big nation, Gujarat. Now it's time for a couple of small guys once again. Of course I'll do it as soon as my truce with them is up in a couple of months. And there's my declaration, and just before I did this, I also vassalized this nation over here, which used to be Orissa's ally. So even easier. And there we go, my war with Orissa is done, and obviously I'll be full annexing them. Once you get Admin Deck 8, and I will take it quite a bit ahead of time over here, it is time to really start focusing on constructing courthouses, because as you all know, and as I said earlier, we are really struggling with GovCap, or at least we were until we got to Admin Deck 8. Now I'm also going to annex vassals that I border, which is all of them except for this guy right here. At a certain point, as you all know, in India, all of the small guys get annexed and it's pretty much left with a couple of big guys only. And in my game, those big guys are me, Bengal, Jaunpur, Delhi, and Mewar. Gujarat and Malwa, I really don't consider that big because they're not that powerful. So at a certain point, you will have to fight those guys as well because they'll have been expanding in their own regions as well. At this point, I'm also going to ally Jaunpur right here in the hope that they'll help me out versus Mewar, for example, who actually isn't that strong since they don't have big allies, but I will need their help versus Bengal since they're allied to Delhi, which also is quite powerful. So try and ally someone big if you haven't already at the start of the game, or if you've lost that alliance, to help you out with the big guys now. And now that I've built a spy network on Bengal and that I know Jaunpur will help me because they got favors, I will be declaring on Bengal my first war versus a very big nation after the one versus Bahmanis. You will have to fight these guys sooner or later, so just get it over with. Gujarat and Delhi are also going to be involved in this war, so it is going to be super annoying. But it is something that has to be done. Around this point, the 1490s, the 1500s, the 1510s is when you'll start fighting the big guys as well. And once again, when fighting a nation with a coastline, we're focusing on taking their coastline. A lot of the provinces that Bengal would own in your campaign as well are really highly developed, so you really can't take too much in one single war without getting any of the other guys mad at you. So I'm just going to take these 5 provinces right here along with all of their money. And that's my war with Bengal done. We will need quite a lot of wars to chop down some of these big guys. After this war, we're once again back to taking out more giant loans and once again improving our nation economically. After lowering autonomy again, I can finally take this needlessly annoying mission, the Tamil Trade Guilds right here, which needs us to have stab and have no own province with Tamil culture over here with more than 50 local autonomy or more than 2 local unrest. And of course, we need to own all of those provinces. A very needlessly annoying mission for a first mission. But after you take that mission, you'll be able to take this as well, which gives you further claims on stuff you already own. And then if you take this mission, you'll gain missionary strength, If you take this mission right here, you gain further claims on stuff you once again probably already own, and then some local goods produced. If you take this mission, more claims on stuff you already own, and if you take this mission, there we go, there's morale, and you're probably over at South Indian Trade, which needs you to have a level 3 center of trade, and the one I recommend you bump up to level 3 is the one in Tanjore, the province we developed to spawn the Renaissance. There we go, at this point I've annexed this subject that was located over here. We're just continuing to do that every time we border our vassals. And by the way, for this mission, apologies, I don't actually recommend upgrading Tanjore because the one you need to upgrade is this one right here. So definitely go ahead and bump it up to a level 3 center of trade whenever you can. You might need to develop it to 25 first, like in my case. Now that I've annexed another subject, Idar, over here, I finally have a border with Mewar, and Mewar is actually a pretty important nation that you need to fight. Of course, it could be someone else, but the nation that owns the gold province in Mewar is actually what I'm talking about, because this is the only gold producing province over in India. Now sure, by this point you will be rich and you don't really care about the gold, but it is always a nice boost. So whenever you have the ability to fight whoever owns the gold mine, make sure to go ahead and do it. I'm spying on them right now. I've vassalized some more nations up here. That is always something we're looking to do during peacetime, and I'm finally going to be declaring on Mewar right here to take the gold mine from them. This should be a pretty easy war since they only have a small ally. We're continuing our expansion north. Once again, we fought a bunch of small nations, now we're back to a big nation. And now that this war with Mewar is done, I'm simply going to take a couple of provinces over here in this region. There we go, that's about enough for now, about 50 aggressive expansion as always. And I'm gonna take as much money as I can. And there we go, we've acquired the gold mine. For your tier 4 government reform, I recommend maintain balance of power. Now that I have more than 50 favors with Jaunpur, what I'm gonna do is actually make them break their alliance with Gujarat so we can finally reconquer Ahmednagar's cores right here. So simply go into Jaunpur, go down here, break alliance, Gujarat, and actually they aren't willing to accept, which is very, very unusual. Usually they are willing to accept, but we can fix that just by improving relations with Jaunpur a little bit over here. What I'm gonna do is send them a gift just like that, and there we go, just from that tiny gift right there, they are willing to accept. And there we go, their alliance with Gujarat no longer exists, which means we can go ahead and declare on Gujarat to reconquer Ahmednagar's cores. And there we go, quick and easy war versus Gujarat done. I'm reconquering my subjects' cores. It doesn't have to be Ahmednagar in your game, it could be someone else, or it could be no one at all, but we're still continuing our expansion up north. That's their cores back, and let's see, I'm gonna take the rest of these provinces that they have over in this region right here. And that's my other war with Gujarat done. Now Ahmednagar has all of its cores back, I can go ahead and annex them. After you take over necessary provinces over here in this region that Bahmanis used to own originally at the start, you will be able to take this mission, Invade Maharashtra right here, where we gain cavalry compatibility plus 15% for 20 years. Once the 1500s come around and once colonialism spawns, I recommend developing for it as well, just like we did with the Renaissance. And the province that I recommend you do that in is this province right here, which specifically needs us to have a level 3 center of trade. Since we're going to be developing it anyway, and it's a cloth producing province, it's a grassland, which isn't as good as farmlands, but still it is going to be pretty cheap. So go ahead and develop colonialism in that province right there that we need to have a level 3 center of trade in for our mission. Once again, do the same things, activate encourage development, develop it up to 15, just like that. Then you can go ahead and expand infrastructure as well and keep developing. Of course, don't forget to full state the province that the gold mine is located in either, and activate encourage development over there as well and develop the gold mine in Mewar up to 10 production. And now that I've upgraded the center of trade over here to level 3, I can take this mission where this event happens. We gain some diplo points and local trade power, but then more importantly, we can take the mission City of Victory right here if we fulfilled the requirements, which realistically you should have. And then this event right here happens. Our government rank changes to an empire, which is very useful, and our capital gets a dev discount and yearly prestige. And we also gain some claims over here in Yemen, interestingly enough. Since I've given Ahmednagar all of their cores back, now I am gonna annex them. And by around the time you develop colonialism, your realm should look a little something like this. Basically, we started off as Vijayanagar down here in the south of India, and we focused on taking care of all of these minor nations over here that weren't in Sri Lanka before focusing our attention over to Bahmanis, beating them up once, then once again fighting small nations, beating up Bahmanis again, beating up small nations, focusing on taking the coastline from nations that were located over here and over here, most likely Gujarat and Orissa, and then once again beating up small guys, getting alliances with big guys to defeat other bigger guys, wiping out Bahmanis, all while diplo diplo-vassalizing nations around India. After we border them, annexing them, or maybe reconquering their cores first and then annexing them. And by this point of the game, you should own all of southern India and pretty much half of the entirety of India right here. You should own half of the provinces that you need to form the nation of Bharat with, which of course you'll go on to do later on. And that's all with pretty normal, non-aggressive, standard gameplay, friendly towards newer players. Of course, by this point, you haven't only been focusing on conquering nations, diplo-vassalizing nations, wiping out minor and major guys and stuff like that. Even though we don't start off that rich, even though we have so much land right at the start as Vijayanagar, after about 20 years, your economy will really start booming once you start conquering lots of provinces, full stating them and lowering autonomy and annexing your subjects. You should also been focusing heavily on the economy. This is what my economy looks like during this point in the game, and you should look to have something similar. As we can see, I'm making about 100 ducats income. We're spending about 40. I could definitely build up a way larger army than I have right now. I would normally do this around this point in the game. As we can see, we're about 63 ducats in the positive. The gold mine in Mewar has been conquered. You should own it by this point in the game. That's about 6 or 7 ducats extra income. Not bad at all. As we can see, inflation has been lowered and we don't really have any loans, but we're ready to take out new giant loans at any point to continue our building of the buildings. And speaking of buildings, these are all the marketplaces that I built pretty much in every center of trade and estuary province. These are all the production buildings that I built, all the workshops in all the high value trade good provinces. As you can see, I can build quite a few more of them. The trade goods in India are so good, and workshops are probably the most important building that you can build over in India. As we can see, I have some temples as well, but I can build quite a lot more of them, so I'll get to that right here pretty soon. A couple of army buildings here and there in the livestock and grain producing provinces, and of course courthouses in every single province that I could have up until this point. After you unlock Admin Tech 8, you should focus on that quite heavily. So that's sort of what my economic situation is looking like. This is my army right here, 24/7. Insane combat ability from missions, events, and ideas and idea groups. Normally around this point, it will be 27.5. That plus 15% right there is from this mission, so normally it would be 27.5. And we have artillery combat ability as well. And like I said, I can double my army size right here, which I'll do pretty soon. 24/7 is pretty good for this combat with. This is my sort of small-ish battle fleet right here. 3 heavies that we start off with, 15 galleys, 10 transports. We won't be utilizing it too heavily, but we will need it versus some nations that have coastlines. And of course, I do have a little trade fleet over here protecting trade. I will build up a lot more of these to protect trade in all of the coastal trade nodes that we have. At this point, I also have about 6 subjects right here. Most of them aren't nations that I border, so we'll be annexing these guys later on. Of course, you should be rolling with a couple of vassals during the entirety of the game, vassalizing nations that you don't border, so you don't have to bother with conquering them later on. And they do help out quite a lot in wars, to be honest, and especially with the force limit too from all of the modifiers that we have from these very good government reforms as well. And that's pretty much what my game is looking like. After this point, you'll continue to expand in the same directions we've already been expanding in by focusing on taking care of some of these missions down here and these missions over here. These missions right here that focus on you going towards Aden and into Africa and into Zanzibar and stuff like that, I generally don't do in my Vijayanagar/India playthroughs, but you can definitely go for them if you want to. So you're going to continue to beat up any small guys that may be left. In my game, they aren't really any small guys. You could say Gujarat and Mewar are small, sure, but I mean 1 to 5 province minors or something like that. And of course, getting a big boy to help you beat up other big boys. Jaunpur is going to help me beat up Bengal and Delhi. Once I'm done with Bengal and Delhi, I'll focus on Jaunpur. So you own half of India, focus on taking the rest of India, and after you conquer the entirety of the Indian subcontinent, basically Hindustan, Bengal, Western India, Deccan, and Coromandel, you should focus on simultaneously expanding over in this direction and in this direction. And like I said, by around the end of your campaign, in a pretty normal Vijayanagar playthrough, what I would own is all of India, Persia and Khorasan, and then Burma and Indochina. If you want to continue pushing in other directions, such as down here, or into China, or over here, it's totally up to you, but this is sort of the standard focus as Vijayanagar. So you'll only do that after you conquer India. Of course, if there are super strong nations right here and you don't want to wait to fight them, you could go through them. For example, after I fight Mewar or Gujarat, I could start pushing into Persia myself by fighting Baluchistan, Fars, and nations like that. The Timurids don't exist. I could even vassalize these Timurids right here, reconquer their cores. There are so many opportunities. So you don't strictly have to focus on taking out India before going this way or that way. But that's pretty much how your gameplay is going to go. Beat up the small guys, beat up the big guys, eat up India, and then go towards Burma, Indochina, Khorasan, and Persia. Pretty straightforward, super fun. Of course, there are lots of monuments scattered throughout India as well. You will be utilizing some of them. Not all of them are that important. This one right here, if you're converting, sure, you could upgrade it, but not really that relevant. Then we have this one right here, which also isn't that relevant aside from the Diplo rep, or sure, if you want to stack tolerance and stuff like that, it is pretty good as well. Then we have the one in our capital, which starts off at tier 1. At tier 3, this one isn't really that relevant as well, unless you're blobbing out way too much, in which case the religious unity will help out a lot. So take a look at these monuments. You can't use all of them. Some of them are pretty useful, other ones not that much. Of course, focus on buildings first, then when you have the extra cash, then you could start building up the monuments. This is what we took for our first two idea groups, quality and trade. Like I said, very nice idea groups for Vijayanagar gameplay, especially with all the combat modifiers that we get from quality. For your third idea group, I once again recommend picking up a mill idea group, most notably offensive or defensive, whichever one you want to. If you're still struggling with manpower or stuff like that, or if you're rich and want to field absolutely huge armies, you could go with quantity as well. Personally, in my game, I'd go with offensive. And after that, for your fourth idea group, I recommend another money-making idea group, for example, such as economic or infrastructure. It's totally up to you. So quality, trade, and after that a mill one like offensive, defensive, or quantity, and after that a money-making one like economic or infrastructure. After that, if you even play that for, it's totally up to you. This is what we took for our first 4 government reforms. Like I said, you have a couple of choices for tier 2 and tier 3, but for tier 5, we do have a semi-unique one right here, Maratha Army, where seizing land from Marathas no longer triggers rebels. We gain some reinforced speed and some Marathas bonuses. Not really that relevant. I don't recommend picking this one up. I recommend going for organized military staff, military engineering, or the defensive stance. For tier 6, I recommend royal decree. For tier 7, I recommend meritocratic recruitment. For tier 8, I recommend empowering the burghers or embracing the economic theory. For tier 9, I recommend the 6 books of the Republic, or if you're blobbing out a whole lot, you could also go with the social contract, so heretic and heathen provinces don't give any penalties. And then for tier 10 and tier 11, all of them are really good. Take whichever one you want. At that point in the game, you won't make a mistake with either one of them. And like I said, around the time you spawn colonialism, your realm should look a little something like this. If you're not that confident in your abilities, or if you're not sure if your game is going to go like mine, the save file is available for all YouTube members in the Save Games Discord channel, and you can continue playing as Vijayanagar from this state forward. Let me know in the comments below what's the next nation that I should do a guide on. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to leave a like, it really helps out a lot, and if you like the content and want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of them. And you can become a member today, and join the Discord, the link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time with another EU4 video.